Cool. So hopefully you've all had a notification that I'm recording. Um, I'm Crystal McNamara. I'm one of the directors at the Bristol Women in Business Charter. Sandra Gordon is here with us as well. She's one of the other directors. And I don't think the rest of the team are here at the moment. They are all busy working on many different projects at the moment, including our awards, which I'll talk about later. But thank you all for joining us. We're recording today's call. Really to make sure that we can share the amazing information that comes from it with our signatories. It's not going to be shared publicly, but we will share it on our members hub. And I'll also create a kind of summary of the key points that Bianca goes over and some of the discussion points that come up so we can make sure that we share that learning with others who wasn't able to join us today. Not everyone's got the time to watch the whole thing. So for those of you that have just joined, if you can introduce yourselves on the chat, that'd be great. In a minute, I'm going to pass over to Bianca, and then when Bianca's talked for about 20 minutes or so, we'll then open it up. We want this to be really interactive. This isn't just a kind of telling session. We want you to talk about what's your experience in your organizations. We've got all of you to share what's good and bad, what are some of the trends, the challenges, what are you worried about in your organizations, what would you like to share with your peers who are all charter signatories with us today, yeah, share what's working really well for you, what you've tried. So we want it to be interactive, and we appreciate your giving up your lunch break to come and join us today. And we really don't mind if you're eating a sandwich in the background either while we go. Um, so I'm going to hand over to Bianca. So many of you might already be aware of Bianca. She is one of our ambassadors at the Charter and has been like a real active supporter and ally of ours for a few years now. And Bianca does amazing work in her organization, EDP Training. She's a big advocate for mental health and well-being, as well as anti-racism. And when we thought about who do we want to come and talk about some of these current challenges, she was obviously the first person we thought of. So I'm going to hand over to Bianca, and she'll tell you a little bit more about what she does, and then we'll start to go into the learning. Over to you.
Oh, thanks, Crystal. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this Thursday lunchtime. Please do. If you need to eat, absolutely, please do. It would be great to get some connection, particularly after I stop talking. So if you can have your cameras on, if possible, that would be great, so I can see your lovely faces. So great introduction from Crystal. I'm Bianca. I manage a company called EDP Training, Empower, Develop People. I'm also the founder of the Race Ahead program, which is an anti-racism and allyship suite of courses designed specifically for workplaces. And although we're based in Bristol, we deliver training all over. So I'm really excited to be here to be talking to you folks over this lunchtime, specifically focusing on racism, psychological safety in the workplace, and in the current climate as well. I've put my LinkedIn in the chat for anyone who wants to connect with me. And as Crystal said, it's going to be a little bit of information for you, some breakout rooms as well, and then free flow kind of questions and answers after as well. Sound good, folks? Excellent. Okay, so let's kick off then. Okay, hopefully you can see my slides. Can you give me a thumbs up, Crystal, if you can see them? Fantastic. That's a good start, isn't it? Okay, folks, so I do want to do a little bit of framing because we are going to be talking about racism and we are going to touch bringing this up to date for you on the current climate. So, safe space, do be respectful, be mindful of what you're sharing, particularly in the larger group conversations as well, because again, it can be quite a challenging topic. Okay, so to kick off then, I do want to touch on the current climate, the backdrop that we've got, specifically at the moment with what we call the raising of the flags. Now, I'm not going to assume that everybody knows the background of why are there so many flags up at the moment. So I'm going to give you a little bit of explanation of how we've got to where we are. And then we're going to unpick it a little bit, bring it back to the workplace for you. And then we're going to think about what we can do at this time. So, for anyone who isn't aware, particularly the St. George's flag was being seen in July supporting the women's Euros in the football. Now, a group of men, specifically in Birmingham, named themselves the Wheelie Warriors and wanted to show off their proud British values and patriotism by showing the flag and putting them on displays on lampposts. Now, what happened in Birmingham is that they were removed, some of them, by the council for maintenance of said lampposts. And this was seen as an act against the British values that the Wheelie Warriors were saying that they were trying to display and show. Because of the removal, Operation Raise the Flag, as it's been coined and named, started. Now, this is where we've seen an increase of the St. George's flag, particularly, but also the Union Jack flag on houses, on lampposts, some parts of the country even spray painted on roundabouts as well. So that's how we've come to where we are today with the visual display of the flags. Now, I want to highlight that having a flag is not an issue in itself, but what this has been turned into and how it's been weaponized and the motivation behind it is the challenge at the moment. Because the weaponization of the visual affront to equity is a challenge and it can send a real message to people because the flag means different things to different people, depending on your identity, ethnicity, background, and culture. For some, the flags can signify oppression. For some, they can signify colonization. And for others, it can mean other things as well. And I think that's important to remember that it's not a one size fits all. Okay, so that's how we've got to where we are. I want to touch a little bit on the systemic nature so that we can understand systemic racism. And I'm going to use the same context of the raising of the flag. So this model is one that we use on our training. It's one of the easiest ways to understand systemic racism. It's called the 4 dimensions of racism, and I'm going to talk around it using the scenario that we've got at the moment, making it current for you folks about the flags specifically. And then we'll bring it back to you and your respective organizations. So I'm going to start with the structural on the right-hand side there. So the structural racism, because there are different kinds of racism as we'll learn as we go round. So structural racism is talking about multiple institutions that are working together that upholds racism and excludes global majority people from being able to take part in society equally or fairly. An example of structural racism when we think about how the flags are being weaponized in regards to anti-immigration, anti-Muslim hate, and Islamophobia is the fact that, according to the most recent migration census, which was in 22, about 16% of people living in the UK at the moment had actually been born abroad. So 16% compared to when I speak to many people, their rhetoric and understanding that it's much more than that, or actually, factually, it is 16%. Moving across to institutional, this is a type of racism where it's referring to policies and practices that reinforce racism. So our institution, the law, for example, it is not illegal in the UK to be an asylum seeker or migrant. However, our institutions of media, of government, can send us a message that it is indirectly. It's a very subtle but overt message. So our institution breeds and creates the environment and feeds the interpersonal racism, which is what most people understand as racism, is the person to person overt kind of racism. But as we're learning, there's many more different types. So bearing in mind media, government, institution feeding into our interpersonal, well, what's happening then if we've got the media that are talking about anti-immigration, if our government and politicians are talking about it in a certain way. Well, this is what happens in the interpersonal. We have in 24, Islamophobia assaults surged by 73%. In March 25, Muslims were the victims of around 45% of religious hate crimes, which was an increase on the previous year, and an increase of 25% in religious hate crimes compared to the prior year as well. So we're seeing an increase in reported hate crimes, an increase in recorded religious hate crimes, and as well as assaults and verbal assaults as well. That's not a coincidence. It's a direct impact of the environment bred by institutional. Interpersonal is what's happening to the person, what's happening person to person. Moving across to internalized, then, which is an internalized type of racism, all thinking about what we've been through, the structural, the institutional, the interpersonal, all sends a message to person that identifies with said group as well. And I think we do need to think about the public discourse that's being created from the institutional around migrants and asylum seekers and how that can reinforce negative stereotypes as well as assumptions and exclusionary attitudes to the person. Cultural racism can embed into workplace culture, and this is where we need to think about our organizations because what's going on externally often is a reflection of what can seep into our workplaces as well. Thinking about who is safe to contribute, whose voices are we listening to, who's being heard, who's being given the spotlight as well. So that's an example of how it all feeds together, particularly in the current context. And I want us to think about the internalized box there, about the person that's experiencing this, because 16%, I think that we can assume that there will be some people from your organizations that are impacted by people here on visas or were not born in the UK. Therefore, it will seep in, and there is an impact on mental health and psychological health, as well as performance and cohesion in the workplace as well. So I've got a little visual for you folks, and this is about the impacts, and this is just from what people have shared with me over the last couple of months. And look, there's a picture of me there just to highlight the impact there a little bit more. So heightened anxiety and hypervigilance in the workplace for people that are trying to navigate the workplace with the backdrop of the current events and current climate as well. Emotional exhaustion and burnout, sleep disturbances and fatigue. And if you think about that with productivity, well, how productive are you going to be if you're absolutely exhausted and not getting the fundamentals of well-being, of quality sleep? Reduced concentration and cognitive load that can show up in forgetting things, missing deadlines, for example, in the workplace. Increased blood pressure and physical tension. So we've got some physical health issues that can start to arise from being under this for long periods of time, under threat, simplified. Decreased morale and connection with your peers, with the company mission, for example, as well. Not feeling safe is another big one. Not feeling safe to be able to contribute, to be able to show up as your whole self and your whole identity in the workplace. And then we've got disengagement and isolation. And this might happen slowly or it can happen fast, where somebody maybe is doing less and less or only doing what's kind of expected of them, not going above and beyond. And of course, feelings of low mood can ultimately result in poor mental health and mental ill health in the workplace as well, like conditions as anxiety diagnosis or depression as well. I think we need to remember that amidst of what's going on, we are all whole people and we can't just, remove trauma, remove parts of ourselves when we step into our roles and our workplaces at 9 a.m. We are whole people and we bring a lot of stuff with us. For many people, the signal of the flags, they've mentioned it re-traumatizing them, sometimes from previous experiences when they were younger or parents or grandparents. So there's that racial trauma element to be informed about as well. And a lot of people will be also navigating the workplace of experiencing microaggressions, often disguised as banter, possibly already experiencing some issues around isolation or exclusion. It's important to note that this can also highlight and appear in the workplace as overcompliance as well. So, this could manifest as somebody feeling so unsafe and insecure that they're overperforming to keep their safety, to keep their role, or to keep their income, which is part of our basic needs. So, this could be somebody first in, last out, overcommitting, taking on more than they can actually manage as well. So I think that's something to consider for how this can show up as well. Okay, folks, that was a whistle stop tour of the current climate, systemic racism, how this can impact people, and how it's currently showing up in the workplace. And I think we really do need to understand that what's going on externally also can seep into behaviours in the workplace as well. Which brings us on to our next task that I've got for you, where you're going to be in breakout rooms together. I want us to think about and reflect on this question, considering what we've just learnt. I'm going to pop you into breakout rooms. This is a chance for you to explore with other people as well. How can your organization values or perhaps policies guide you in supporting staff and maintaining psychological safety for everybody during this time? So you can take a picture of this, and I want you to go into breakout rooms for about 8 minutes or so and just start the conversation, reflecting on this question, sharing anything good that you're doing. And then when I bring you back from your groups, I'll ask each group in turn to share a couple of sentences. So do nominate a spokesperson, please. Has anyone got any questions? No, if you have, just shout out or pop your hand up. It's going to be 8 minutes, and we'll put you in small groups together, and you are being invited in now, folks. We'll see you in around 8 minutes, and I'll give you a 1 minute warning.
How are you?
Hi.
Hello.
Everybody. Such
I've
good
just started the
conversations.
recording again.
Thank you. Such good conversations happening in the group that I was in. So what I think is best is to go around and have a couple of sentences, a summary from each group. Making sure it's something different would be helpful as well. So group one, that was Caroline and Caroline's group. A couple of sentences from your conversation. Remembering the question was, how can your organisational values guide you in supporting staff and psychological safety at this time?
Bianca, you know how you wrote about 3 times nominate a spokesperson?
Yeah.
We didn't.
How about a group effort?
We'll nominate you, Caroline.
Oh no. Okay, thank you. I'm going to try and remember. Please, anybody jump in
Group
from the
effort,
group if I
yeah.
forget. So we spoke about the differences in what you can do depending on which organization you are. So if you're a private organization, you kind of have a little bit more leeway with regards to how you go about this. So we spoke about a lived experience of a colleague who was experiencing a lot of anxiety because of what had been happening in the climate. And the company put together things like buddy schemes for traveling to and from work so that people felt safe. That one of the senior people in the team had said, do you want to come and live with me for a little while? Just, things like that, just to make sure that people were safe. Obviously saying that it was awful that things like that had to be put in place, but it was a way of the company trying to, make sure that, sorry, I'm just click that off. Just to make sure that colleagues did feel safe and secure, and it was appreciated by the colleague. I spoke about that I work at the university. There was some staff and students saying that actually campus felt like a really protective bubble for them.
Mhm.
So when they were on campus, they did feel safe. Um, it was that commute to and from campus where they just didn't feel safe at all. And this included people who were born and bred Bristolians who
Yeah.
were saying, I don't feel safe in my own city
Gosh,
anymore.
goodness.
They wanted the university to validate that and to go out with a statement. And actually, our hands are tied by law because of freedom of speech and academic freedom of expression, which the Conservative government brought in just
Mhm.
before they lost the election. Um, so we have to be really careful with our wording and what we do to make sure that we are staying absolutely neutral. So we were just saying about how you have to be more creative in certain organizations because you
Yeah.
don't have the freedom that perhaps you do if you're a private firm as well. And also spoke about the importance of being openly anti-racist
Mhm.
organizations. But if
Thank
I've
you very
forgotten
much.
anything, please jump in.
Thank you, Caroline. Really, really good points there. Lucy, Sonia, Caroline, anything else or did Caroline cover that beautifully? Beautifully, you got
Covered
thumbs up.
beautifully.
Did
Yeah.
very well.
Excellent. Group two then, anything different?
Yeah,
Helena, Karen, Sandra, give us a
yeah. So
summary.
I was the nominated spokesman. So hi everyone.
Excellent.
So we had Karen from Clark Wilmot, Helena from Burgess Salmon, and myself from S&W. So all very similar kind of professional services firms. So we talked about our values, and all in all, very similar in terms of our core values about caring,
Mhm.
being curious, respecting each other, always being authentic. So we were saying at the heart of it, the firms are supporting that authenticity of their employees. And we talked about what we do as bigger firms in terms of training, microaggression training, psychological safety training, mental well-being training, all of that kind of thing. But what we said is on our environments, obviously, we're always on chargeable time. People put their training on double speed. They do that
Mm.
whilst working at the same time. And how valuable is the time that is being spent on learning these important things that are coming from the training. So what we kind of came back on is said that we have people surveys that give us that kind of summary, and we can dissect the data
Ooh.
to find out what people are feeling. Do they feel they can bring their authentic selves to work? Do they feel supported? But what we kind of said was actually what it really truly comes down to is training's one thing. Does it work? It comes down to this most senior leadership. Are they
Mm.
showing the right behaviors in terms of showing people they should be challenging the wrong behaviors? So there's one thing learning what the right behavior should be, but if the senior leadership aren't, you know, being the role models here, challenging the wrong behaviors and showing that's what everyone should be doing, that's where I think this all falls down, even if you are taking
Yeah,
steps. So that was
love
kind of
that.
what we discussed.
Well done. Thank you. That was really, really good. Insightful stuff, and especially about the senior leaders as well, that role model behavior. Excellent. Damien, Esther, anything different for your group? Anything to add?
Oh, yes, that was me. I was the nominated speaker.
Woohoo. Thank you, Susie.
Go,
Hi,
Susie.
everyone. Thanks, Esther. I nominated Esther and then got backed into a corner. Anyway, we had really great chats, actually. Really, really, we could have carried on talking all afternoon, I think.
Yeah.
I think we spoke about acknowledgement of the flags and of things going on. And I was reflecting on my own experience where I worked. There was a lot of flags in the area. I'd been
Right.
off and came back and seen them. And my reaction was quite strong, and I was quite upset about it, and kind of said to my team, you can do this. And like, I don't think anybody else had said anything before. So then we were talking in the group, it was actually saying just acknowledging it then allows other people to be able to know that they can talk about it and they're in a supportive place. And we talked about having the policies. So Esther talked about the anti-racism strategy and having those things in place, but
Yeah.
not just having them as pieces of paper that stay in your drive, actually making sure that they are coming to life in the day to day and how we work. And I think again with the with the values thing, it was kind of shared values about supporting each other and trusting, but are you doing it in those day-to-day things? And Elsa actually said she had in their company, they have their values written on the wall,
Okay.
which I love. We used to have that at OVO, and I found it a great thing to be able to go into the office every day and see those values. So
Yeah.
it's made me think I need to get painting in my office and get them on the wall. But yeah, having that trust, having that transparency, I think is really that first step.
Absolutely.
Have I missed
Love
anything,
that.
team?
No, beautifully done, Susie.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Thank you, Susie. That was really, really insightful. Thank you. And I think as well, the policy, the anti-racism policy that you mentioned, that's what I gave a clap to, because so many organizations don't have that in place. So use what you've got, folks. Excellent. Okay, last couple of groups then, including the one I was in. Luke, Megan, Archie, anything different that hasn't been said? Anything to add?
I think just in our group, we talked about we were varying sizes of organizations. It feels like the larger the organization gets, the more likely you are to have a policy and to have organizational-wide training, etc. And as somebody mentioned just now, sorry, I've gone off my screen, having not only policies to say this is what good behavior looks like, but also the other side of it to say this is unacceptable behavior. So we have like code of conduct type training. But yeah, people just recognize the need to continue learning no matter what size their organization is.
Love that. Thank you, Luke's group. Yeah, and actually having the policies to mitigate against discrimination and things like this happening and using them. Absolutely. And Luke, good point about the size of the organization. And I think for smaller organizations, thinking about what you can do, because your hands might be tied in many ways, but there can be something that we can think about what we can do. Last then, well, it's just me and you because Manny's left.
Yes, just me and you. So hi everybody. So we were completely different organizations. From TLT's point of view, we've got an ethnic diversity network, and our network is run by colleagues. It's got senior sponsorship from partners within the organization who then report up to the senior leadership within the organization. And the network actually held a coffee morning virtual session on this very topic last week, where it was a very safe space. Anybody could talk about issues that they might have, but also how important it is to not just be talking about what's happening in work, but how it affects people outside of work as well. We're very fortunate that we've got a very flexible working strategy. So last year there were a couple of incidents where people were even afraid to leave their homes, but it didn't affect their working life because they could still work where they actually were. So messaging, senior leadership, well-being support, a lot of the things that have already been mentioned came out in the conversation.
Thank you. And I loved being part of your group, by the way.
Thank you.
Something that really stuck with me was actually using your steering groups, using your ERGs as well. I think that's a really, really good point. Excellent. Well done, folks. Really, really good stuff. Has anybody got anything to add that has not been mentioned that you think it would be worth sharing with the group? Or anything that's come to you while we've all been sharing?
The only other couple of things that came up, I think, were sometimes in smaller, certainly as smaller organizations and as they grow, there might actually also be a lack of diversity in the organization, which means they haven't yet come across some of these challenges. And they're not, and they're trying to improve diversity themselves as well. So I think, it's really interesting how it feels like it depends on the sector. It also depends on the size of the organization, and it also depends perhaps how diverse the organization is as well. I think that was really another thing that came up in our group.
Love that. Thank you. Esther, yes?
Bianca, just one quick thing. We did have a quick conversation around language about people not necessarily feeling comfortable with appropriate language or not knowing what's appropriate. So people saying things that they therefore go, I don't know whether this is okay to say, and apologizing before they've said it, but not necessarily being wrong about the language, but just maybe sometimes the context, or just sometimes saying nothing because people aren't sure. So that education piece around language is really important. I know, same as most places, we'll go put it in a toolkit. No, we can't. It's too much. And it's just about getting people comfortable with being able to ask what is that language that they can and can't use. We use safe spaces in the police, and we have safe spaces on race. And that's sort of like a closed meeting where two people talk about their lived experience, and they are two black guys. Talk about lived experience, talk about local historic background. So people talk about, well, I don't really know anything about the St. Paul's riots, or I don't know this and that. We've got lots of people don't even know who Stephen Lawrence is. We've got a workforce that's quite young in service and in age as well. So it's just taking people back and going, actually, let me educate you. I'm not going to force you, but let's educate you and give you some context as to why this might be the case. People are not going to shout you down if you do it with some empathy and some consideration, and always ask. I think that's the key to it, from kind of having to gone through 2 years of going from being institutionally racist, still working our way through it, is just keep the conversations going.
Oh, absolutely. Keep talking. Don't be afraid to ask and learn as well, because we're in the age of the internet at our fingertips. You can learn, you can research, you can find out a lot of information for yourself, self-learning, which I advocate massively for allies as well. Thanks, Esther. And Sandra, I think, has got something to add to what you've just said as well.
Yeah, I think just following on from Esther, don't be frightened to ask your employees how they're feeling, because I think sometimes people can shy away from having that conversation. And there's a lot going on, as Bianca said at the start of the workshop, the stats and the impact that individually your employees could be having as a result of what is going on, and the environments. You don't always know people's individual circumstances. So I think being very mindful of showing some compassion. I think ignoring it doesn't help either, because there's sometimes a feeling that perhaps people don't care. But think about, individually what people have to face every day. I've mentioned in my group that I know of some people in South Bristol, every day they're waking up and seeing the flags. And what's the impact of that if you're having to come to work in that, going back at night in that? So I think there's a whole load of other issues to think about. I think the policies are fine and the training's fine, but when you come down to just some practical help, just in checking someone, asking if they're okay, asking is there anything that we could do to support them. And I loved, I can't remember if it was Susie, someone mentioned about offering for someone to stay with them. Even those little things, they all kind of matter, because it is back to just us being human with some of this. And we can see there's an increase in, and I think there's going to be more hate crime. We're going to see even more of that. And how as businesses, employers, how do you support your employees when they're going through all of this?
Love that. Thanks, Sandra. I'm particularly thinking about people lone working, people working out on the roads as well. And amidst all this, asking about safety or making reasonable adjustments can be useful. Helen, I saw your hand up. You've got something to add.
There's only one thing. I know we were just saying there, Sandra, about sort of checking in with people. So earlier this year, we changed our policy for our appraisal. So it would be sort of an interim and an annual appraisal, but we've changed it to make sure that everyone has a monthly check-in conversation instead. And we've had incredible feedback about that, because obviously we've been able to, people have more real-time information about how they're performing in their job. So, I mean, that's just much better anyway. But actually the feedback has been that those conversations become more personal. If you've got concerns or worried or mental health things or, anything, people feel more comfortable to open up. So we've had really positive feedback. That's what I wanted to share.
Love that. So increasing your touch points to be able to actually have the opportunity to check in on well-being, not just performance. Love that. Anyone else before I add my 2 pence in on language?
Bianca, there was a question in the chat. Caroline Wynne asked a question earlier. She noticed that you were using the term global
Oh, language.
majority, and that they've been having an internal conversation about that term, and should what's your advice about terminology or terms to use, and I
That.
suppose trends as well
Mhm.
when it comes to these things.
Yeah. Good question, Caroline. This is something that comes up a lot and something that we cover on our courses around terminology as well. So we have an inclusive language guide that we can share with you after this. I'll send it to Crystal and Sandra to forward on. However, we're forever updating it because language, when we made that a year ago, has changed. It's forever evolving. Think about where we are with pronouns now. It's forever evolving and shaping around racial literacy. What I can say though is when we have a safe space and we have our courses and we talk about it, it's best for you to adopt whatever you want to use and the reasons behind that. So if you're going to use the term global majority, which is factually talking about the majority of the world, just put on your website why you're using that. And I think that if we've thought about it and we've got a good reason and we put the why, then it's, rather than just using anything, but agreeing your terms internally and externally. I work for a company that does report to government and they do have to use the term BAME still for some of their reports. However, they've stipulated that internally they use different language. So it's just about communicating, cascading that out, deciding what you're going to use, maybe consulting as well. Some companies send a survey out asking what it is that people are wanting to use. Obviously, talking to your Black and brown employees as well. You may hear me use lots of different terms, and just because I identify with the race protected characteristic, that doesn't mean that what I'm saying doesn't offend some people. Even me, as a race equity trainer and educator, gets pulled up because language is so nuanced and subjective. I think the best thing you can do is a little caveat, like I do on my courses, explaining what language I use and why. Does that help?
I think that's
Yes.
really good feedback.
Thank
Sorry,
you. Yeah,
Caroline.
great. Thanks.
It probably also depends on the makeup of your organization. So I know that in the charter, we have some organizations that have like US headquarters and so on, or and when we're at events so they might use the term people of color, which is not well used in the UK, but is very well used in the US. So again, if that's a term that as an entire organization is used and there's context for that and it's explained, then but that could be offensive to some people as well. So it's all about context, isn't it?
And it's just so subjective as well. I mean, it's really important that we kind of have the safe space, and as I've now named, kind of brave space to be able to really explore this in organizations. And I'll put some links in the chat as well for anyone who wants more information around education, and specifically our free guides as well that I will put to Crystal and Sandra. But we'll put the links in the chat for anyone who wants more information for myself personally as well for you all. And is there any other questions from anyone?
There's nothing else in the chat, but feel free, guys, to raise your hands if you've got some more questions.
I think Damien's going to pop something in the chat for a link for me. But if anyone wants to add anything, ask anything, now is your opportunity. There's nothing I haven't heard before. I can assure you.
Do you want to read the chat? Luke's just put a comment in there, but it's quite long. By the time I've read it,
I can say it.
Go on, Luke.
So in our inclusion forum, we're often just discussing, like our objectives and what we need to achieve this year, etc. And we've had feedback that people would just like some more space to express themselves, to bring up things that are more topical in the moment, rather than just focusing on, well, this is what we need to achieve by the end of the year. And so this idea of brave spaces sounds like it might be something that would be worth us exploring
Yes.
Whether that's like a quarterly thing where people can just come and bring something that they want to express, or how do you
Yeah.
use those sessions?
So what we've heard a lot over the past couple of years is psychological safety and safe spaces. But actually, that doesn't cover what actually needs to happen in those spaces because what you've just said, Luke, we need brave spaces where everybody can talk up because we need people to talk up to have the conversations. I think holding the space, giving people permission, what you've said there about senior leaders being present and maybe even facilitating or sharing, that's really powerful. When it's people from the top that are role modeling, it's okay to talk about this, it's okay to challenge. That is something that can work quicker than anything else that you can do. If you have someone at the top who's sharing their experience, giving permission, visibly challenging, that works so quickly for real cultural change. But I think for creating the space is just giving people permission and giving the opportunity for space as well. And I've got to say, one of the main feedbacks after thousands of courses, thousands of learners, the most important thing that people say is thank you for holding the space for us to talk about this challenging topic as a team. That is a reoccurring theme. So I just think it highlights the power of having that space held well by facilitators or people, peers, networks, EIGs, because people want the space. They want to be able to talk about these topics. And yeah, they want to feel like they can talk and share.
Right, can you see Archie's got his hand up?
Oh, yes, please.
Just a quick one. I had a, you know, with my organization specifically, it's not really, I know Crystal mentioned it earlier, it's not really something that's talked about at all. It doesn't, I'm pretty sure if I asked anyone, they would say, it's not a problem here. Because it's just not a topic. It's not a very like diverse company.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering like how we can raise awareness of it without making it like an issue and more of like is it a way of like giving people the opportunity to say if they do have any issues with it or if there's anything going on outside of work without kind of forcing it out of people and rather just giving it their space. And because I want to make sure it's talked about, I want to raise awareness of it in the organization without like shoving it in people's faces when they don't think there's a problem, if that makes sense. But I guess that is the problem.
Yeah.
Don't know if I'm
So
making any sense.
no, I completely understand. And in a company that's kind of less diverse or sometimes small, and as I think Crystal mentioned earlier, growing, we often do hear, well, it's not a problem. But if we don't have the 20% kind of representation of global majority, which is echoed in our census, if we can sit in our company and do a visual audit and we haven't got 20% global majority people, or we have, but they're in one specific sector, which is often what happens, they're in one specific area of the business, then there is a challenge. And that's one visual quick audit that you can do to think, well, what's the challenges here if we haven't got the same representation as in the census, for example? I think there's a big question of a why as well. We can't just tell people not to be racist. We need to, have the case for why it's important to be inclusive and how it will benefit the organization. So going in with your organization to the benefits and that they'll have a diverse workforce in the future, and that will add to innovation and people feeling like they can take risks, particularly when we've got the next generations of recruits coming up. I think that kind of business case might be more palatable and acceptable than we might be racist. We need to do some training.
Yeah,
These are the
thank you.
benefits.
Thanks.
Right, we are running steadily out of time, so I'm going to thank Bianca for her time. I'm sure there's loads more questions that you would love to have asked her, but please reach out directly to her. And there you go. She's put her LinkedIn again. She's happy to help and also happy to talk to you about her courses and how she can help your organizations as well. We really appreciate you all being open and sharing. This is a safe space. We are sharing the recording just in this closed signatory group. And yeah, we really appreciate what you've been able to tell us. We can tell you about our next event, which is like this. So we're trying to do these more regularly. I would say monthly, but Sandra would probably kill me for that because we're very busy. But our next session is actually going to be run by Megan from the Greenhouse, who's with us today. So hopefully I can quickly share my screen, or actually maybe I'll just put the link. I'll put the link in and you can have a look. But essentially, we're going to be having our event at the end of January. So it's about supporting employees affected by trauma, guidance for managers. So you can sign up to that event online. It is a signatory only event, but the Greenhouse are trauma experts. They're a charity that supports children who have gone through sexual abuse and violence, but can use that trauma experience to really help managers with some of those things that turn up in the workplace. So we would love you all to join us there. And then my final thing that, again, I'm going to put in the link is that hopefully you've all seen that our awards are happening. So the Bristol Women in Business Charter Awards, March next year at Bristol Museum. We were there yesterday doing some final planning and it's going to be amazing. But we want you to nominate. So you might have amazing women in your organization that you think actually they're absolute game changers. They're doing a lot. It could be a man in your organization that's an amazing ally and has been doing amazing things. It could be someone within your community that's doing amazing work. So we're really looking for people who are making the world a better place for all women, and that can make many different forms. So have a look on the website. There's a bit more information about closing date. So the 15th of December at the moment, we need all the nominations. So you've got a little bit more than a week. We might extend that by a few days. And then we hope you can all join us at the event as well. So yeah, have a look. And we hope that you can get involved. I think I've gone 1 minute over. Sorry. I tried to fly through that. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your day and your weekends and happy Christmas.
Thank you, everyone. Great to meet you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bianca. You're amazing.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.